I have with me in the studio Professor Segun Ajibola. He is the immediate past president of the Chartered Institute of Bankers, a professor of economics at the Caleb University, Lagos, Imota, Lagos. Thank you very much, Prof, for joining us on the show.
Thank you very much.
I must also tell you, Ramadan Kareem.
Same to you.
Ali, thank you very much for at least coming to join us on the show today, being a public holiday. Now, let's start with Governor Emefiele. We just saw him there. He walked into the office again yesterday to start a second term after all said and done. Let's put it in perspective. What are your expectations this time from the central bank? He has said there will be people-oriented policies. Job creation will be his focus. But what are your expectations?
Well, the Central Bank of Nigeria moderates the monetary policy for the economy as a whole. And we know that monetary policy governs the other sectors of the economy. So central bank plays a role of economic managers for the country as a whole. So whatever is the direction of policy, whatever is the thrust of policy, the role of central bank is very, very critical. And whatever the economy is going to achieve over a period of time, it depends on how strong the monetary policy is for that period of time. And it's also a function of how committed other segments of the economy are in cooperating with the Central Bank of Nigeria. We know that at every point in time, there must be that nexus between the monetary and the fiscal policy. So in summary, Central Bank of Nigeria is a key driver, is a key manager. And most times, because of the role of money in the economy, the Central Bank of Nigeria must gauge the state of the economy at every point in time to be able to determine the most appropriate mix of money stock that could drive the economy to greater heights. And we know that as of today, there is the economic recovery and growth plan of the immediate past administration, which has become the new administration, a continuum. So Central Bank of Nigeria will also play a critical role in driving that plan so that at the end of the day, the lofty objectives as contained in that plan will be achieved.
Indeed. The last time we had an opportunity to sit with the governor of the central bank, he was able to explain to us that he's been using some unconventional policies to drive this economy because of the challenge we face, particularly focusing on imports, trying to discourage imports, the banning of importing some items and all of that. Now, these unconventional policies, as an economist, what do you make of it?
Yeah, I think the issue is that of having strong institutions. Opinions are divided. One, we have some statutory institutions that are saddled with certain responsibilities. There is the Bank of Agri, for example. So some feel that if a Bank of Agri that is statutorily set up is in existence, what's the bank doing if the bank cannot drive, like the Anchor Borrowers Program? Why should central bank take it upon itself to go directly into this when it could help to strengthen Bank of Agri to play that role of direct lending to the beneficiaries? Should it be the responsibility of central bank? Also, when you look at Bank of Industry, you see that the Bank of Industry is empowered statutorily to drive some key sectors of the economy, like the small to medium enterprises. That if central bank is now going into providing the kind of loans that we have seen, direct disbursement or direct access to the end users through central bank, then why is Bank of Industry in existence? Thirdly, that if Central Bank of Nigeria now sets up a microfinance bank of its own, then competing with who? With these hapless microfinance banks that are operating at the fringes, some of them becoming moribund. Now, if we have a very strong and central bank backed microfinance bank, we others not close down operations. So that's one school of thought. The governor of central bank came back to say that ours, that is the Nigerian situation, demands unorthodox approach to solving certain problems. Yes. So what I would say, my own personal opinion is that maybe at the end of the day, the end will justify the means. But if central bank is doing this at this moment, I think it should be temporary. Let's strengthen our institutions. Let's make the institutions work. If we use unorthodox approach will be for a while. Should help us to redirect our path and chart a new pathway. The moment we're able to do that using unorthodox approach, then we should go back to institutionalized arrangement through these statutorily set up bodies.
Prof, many bodies, concerned bodies, business experts, analysts have come up setting an agenda for President Buhari, considering what has happened in the past 4 years. A lot of issues. We had the forex challenge that also has to do with the central bank one way or the other, and also the economy in general. There are lots of things need to be done at this time to really kickstart and reflect this economy. Now, we've seen the figures, the GDP figures for the first quarter of 2019. Not really impressive compared to what we have, what we had in 2018, if we look at it. So, I don't want to say quick wins, but we need to hit the ground running. Where do you think they should start from?
They should start with strengthening the capacity of the economy to operate, to run. One, we need to revisit the issue of infrastructure. And number one among the list, the long list, is the question of power. The situation with power is still not impressive. And if power is not available, so many sectors of the economy are already in deep crisis. Small to medium enterprises that we've been trying to encourage, that the administration has talked about and has done a lot to encourage, will not be able to operate without power being available. So we should see what could be done about power, what could be done about other infrastructural facilities, like roads, either we talk of federal, state, or even local government, trunk A, trunk B, trunk C, and so on and so forth. Because without the ease of movement from one part of the country to the other, agriculture as a sector, for example, will still be a challenge sector. Then we need to look at the issue of even the enabling environment, which some call the ease of doing business. There are certain issues within our own confines here that need to be addressed. So many have talked about the issue of multiple taxes. Well, some will say some of them are not legal, but all that we know is that operators are made to pay.
We have tax, we have levies.
All exactly, under a lot of intimidation and harassment from all tiers of government, from different law enforcement agents. We should put an end to some of this so that we don't scare away even our own local investors. Then we need to address the issue of security very fast. What we are hearing all over, be they kidnappers, be they herdsmen, be they OPC, be they Niger Delta, Avengers, agitators, and so on and so forth. The situation with security in the country today is such that local and foreign investors are scared. So we need to do something fast, and we need that federal might to curtail the challenges of security. So if we can, as a matter of urgent national importance, if we can address some of these issues, I've listed out about 3 or 4 of them, then we'll be able to see that the capacity of the various sectors of the economy to produce has been strengthened up. Then we can now go into the different sectors and see what we can do. Agric, small to medium enterprises, the manufacturing, the services, tourism, banking and finance, insurance, even the entertainment industry, hospitality industry. But if we don't resolve some of these basic and fundamental issues, it will be difficult for us to see a paradigm shift from what we have seen in terms of slow growth in the overall economy.
Another thing that is worrisome, I know you know about, is the high rate of unemployment. That has also been very worrisome at the percentage where it stands now. And we keep talking about growth, yes, inclusive growth. Because we need a growth that is inclusive for Nigeria to move on. Yeah, so that inclusive growth, one document that everybody looks at, we've touched it, is the Economic Recovery and Growth Plan. Beautiful document.
Well crafted.
But how well? What are you saying about implementation? Because also our budget has something to do with this, and we already have a deficit in this budget. How do we service all of this and move on positively to even achieve all that we aim to achieve with our budget 2019?
You know what macroeconomics is all about? Is how to synchronize so many conflicting goals, how to bring them together, so that at the end of the day, looking at the big picture, we'll be able to move forward. Inflation is a challenge. Unemployment is a problem. High exchange rate is another challenge. So, but if we are able to address the fundamentals, then we start what economists call some trade-offs. Do we need moderate inflation so that we can, where necessary, reflate the economy and create employment opportunities through some multiplier effects? What do we do to fiscal policy? Like government is saying we have deficit. Deficit means we want to borrow. Borrowing locally, we may crowd out the private sector, the private investors. How do we make a trade-off so that we don't borrow so high, and when government is borrowing so high, you see the treasury bills rate as just one index going up so high. So what do we do? If we want to borrow from outside the country, what nature of borrowing? I've always talked about project-tied borrowing, for example, so that we can track where the money is going and we can measure the impact of that borrowing, the overall, the net effect on the economy. So it's always a basket of policies, a basket of measures. So at the end of the day, we see that the bigger picture benefits, improves in the various dimensions that we look at. So when we talk about economic recovery and growth plan, ERGP, we can see a government that is determined. We can see a government that has the will, but at the same time, there are obstacles.
Exactly.
There are shackles that need to be cut off. So if I've mentioned power, wherever we want to go as a country, as an economy, we must address the issue of power.
So some strong decisions need to be taken at this time.
Need to be taken. Like, for example, somebody was still arguing, why don't you give states
power to generate
their own statutory power to generate power and address some of their own deficiencies? If you have certain institutions within the economy that are in a position to generate their own power, I'm sure some oil and gas companies can do that, some telecommunication companies can do that. Why don't you allow them? That will be addition to the national grid. So we need some drastic measures. You need desperate measures to address desperate challenges. That's the issue of power. We've talked about security. So however committed, however determined you may be, If some of these teething issues, teething problems are not nipped in the bud, you discover that as fast as you may want to run, you will be running with your hands tied to your back.
There's no progress. Professor Segun Ajibola, thank you very much. Professor of Economics, Caleb University, Immortal Lagos.